Well, hello. Thanks for coming back to check out another video. So, we are here today to sit down and finally do it, rank some eyeshadow palettes. Now, I say finally with a little bit of a grain of salt. I have ranked all of my BH Cosmetics palettes previously in the past, so I'll link that video for you below. I've also ranked other, areas of my makeup like foundations and highlighters and blushes and things like that. So I'll just leave the whole ranking my makeup playlist for you guys in the description box. But I know I've said before, like in the past, like ranking my eyeshadow palettes like as a whole just feels so like not overwhelming, but just so challenging. And I don't think that I'm up for that. I think my hang up is because once you start like pulling in different brands, like there's more to consider. So if you're just ranking your palettes from one brand, it's a little bit easier because like just thinking about it, they should ultimately have the same formula, the same kind of consistency, the same kind of color payoff. So all of those like little variables are taken out of it, and so it's easier to just rank palettes by one brand. But I think I'm kind of up for the challenge of ranking some of my eyeshadow palettes. So I thought it would be really fun to get on here with you and rank 10 randomly selected eyeshadow palettes. That way I have no control over it. Like I don't have any influence on like the things that we will be talking about. I think that's the best way to go about it. Hopefully you guys are into that. I'm going to pull up pretty random on my phone. I have numbers 1 through 66 if I counted correctly. So we'll randomize 10 numbers together. Then I will go and grab those 10 eyeshadow palettes and show them to you just so that you know what 10 palettes we will be ranking together today. And then I'm going to turn the camera off and I'm going to spend some time with these palettes and really decide how would I rank them 1 through 10. I guess I forgot to say too, like we do have pretty random, right? We'll get the number. I have a spreadsheet where I have all of my eyeshadow pans listed out. So I'm just going to go by that. Like it tends to be in alphabetical order, but like we get number 3. What is the third palette listed in the spreadsheet? That's how we're going to do this. So 10 numbers. I do have prevent rerolls on. So we get 37, 29, 38, 36, 39. Didn't we already get 39? No, excuse me, we got 29, but that is our 6th number. So 7 would be 52. Then we get 60, 22, and 34 to round that off. Let me make sure this was 10 numbers, and I'm going to go grab the palettes. Okay, so I have went and grabbed the 10 palettes that we randomly selected to rank, and I have to say I didn't really notice it because they didn't pop up like right in a row, but I'm pretty sure we got like numbers like 34, 35, 36, 37, 38. So we have a lot of Glamlite palettes because those take up the 30 slots like in my spreadsheet. So either way, let me just quickly show you all of the palettes that we will be ranking. So we have ColourPop Sonic Bloom. I will open these up once we actually rank them. Glamlite Frosted Flakes. We have the Oden Solmåne 1 palette that has been discontinued. I have Menagerie Killer Purr as well as BH Cosmetics Blueberry Muffin. I have, let's see what else. Both the Wine palette and the Dirty Martini palette from the Glamlite Happy Hour collection. Then we also have the Glamlite Cake palette, the Blend Bunny, the Dollhouse palette, and the final 10th one is the BH Cosmetics Cotton Candy palette. So like I said, I'm going to take some time to decide how I would like to rank these palettes, and I will be right back to share my thoughts with you. Okay, so I am back. I have spent probably about an hour to 2 hours. I didn't really look at the clock, I'm sorry. But I did spend quite a good long while thinking about how I would rank these 10 randomly selected eyeshadow palettes. So without any further rambling, let's just get on into this and go ahead and let me show you palette number 10. So I'm going to give it to the BH Cosmetics Cotton Candy palette from their Sweet Shop collection. Now this palette, the formula is so good. It matches like the BH Cosmetics amazing quality. It matches the amazingness of the other Sweet Shop palettes. The only reason that I have to put this in at number 10 is simply because this palette does not have the depth that I want it to. This does not go as dark. These 3 matte shades down here, so you've got Sugar Plum, Light and Airy, and then Carnival. So while they're all different shades of like purples and pinks, they all have the same depth to them, and they're more mid-tone shades. Whereas I feel like within the other Sweet Shop palettes, even like the neutral one, you get more of that depth. And I really like to have that contrast on my eyes between a very dark outer V area and a lighter lid shade. So that is why this one had to come in at number 10. All right, so palette number 9, I'm going to give it to the Glamlite Cake palette. So I really do, at the end of the day, like this palette. This is my only true rainbow palette, I would say, because a lot of my palettes that have a lot of colors to them are missing a good matte yellow, and you do get that within this palette. And I really do love and appreciate that for the most part, you have a shimmer and then a corresponding matte shade. I just feel like that makes it really easy to put some of these more brighter, colorful shades to use. The reason I'm putting this in at number 9 isn't because the formula is bad or anything like that. Like, this aligns with all of the other Glamlite palettes that I've personally tried and that I have in my collection. It's just, for whatever reason right now, I don't feel super inspired by this palette. Now, I have done some really pretty eye looks using just this palette, and I did get a lot of enjoyment out of it. But for right now, I really just view this as a companion palette. And so when I do think to dip into it, it's usually just for 1 or 2 eyeshadows. So I didn't feel comfortable like putting it up any higher than in this ranking list than spot number 9. Okay, so palette number 8, I'm going to put the Blend Bunny, the Dollhouse palette in here. Now, much like the Glamlite palette, I feel like this is a really good palette. I really do love this. This is consistently one of my favorite all-time like neutral palettes since getting it into my collection. I love the like variety that you have in here and that it goes from really light to really dark. It's just, however, right now I haven't really been drawn to wearing a ton of neutral eyeshadows. So when I do pull this out, I'm really only coming into this because it's like, oh, I need that like one matte shade to really make this look perfect, or oh, a shimmer from this palette would just go so well with this look. So it is more of a companion palette for me right now. The reason I ranked it above the Glamlite palette is because I do feel like this is a little bit more inspiring. Even though it's like a neutral palette, I feel like even though I'm viewing it as a companion palette right now, I'm much more likely to take out the Blend Bunny, the Dollhouse palette, and use it as a standalone palette. Whereas right now, I'm not going to do that with the Glamlite palette. All right, so palette number 7, I'm gonna leave the like number on the screen. So if I say the wrong thing because I've lost count, because even though it's 10 palettes, I'm gonna lose count, it'll be on the screen. But either way, let's talk about the Oden's Solmåne 1 palette next. So this is what this one looks like. I feel like for Oden's as a brand, this was one of their more neutral eyeshadow palettes, although they do have the Alva 1. I feel like maybe it's hard to say which one would be more neutral. I feel like that's a personal choice. But either way, this is one of their more neutral palettes. It is still a really pretty palette, and I really do enjoy the formula of this one. I have owned the Alva palette. I feel like the shimmers in this Solmåne palette are more impactful and more in your face than what you get from that Alva palette. However, I feel like Oden's formula has it's like become better and better with each palette that they have released. And since this was one of their first palettes, like they've obviously released a lot more since then. So while I still really do enjoy this, I feel like I enjoy my other Oden's palettes just a little bit more. But I still really do like the color story of this. So even though it is a neutral eyeshadow palette, I feel like you've got some fun pops of color in here. So like this periwinkle purple, and it really makes sense within this palette, I think, especially with a lot of the shimmer shades that they chose to include in here. And then this shadow down here is one of my absolute favorites. This is one of those like shifty green, gold, red kind of shades, like what you would find in the ABH Subculture palette, that shade Electric. Like this shadow definitely reminds me of that. So I really do enjoy this palette, and I do think to pull this out and, you know, do a look with it, especially when it's one of those like, I need to get out the door, like I don't have a lot of time. Like this is one of my go-to palettes where I know I can sit down, throw on 2 eyeshadows, and look really put together. Okay, so up next in the ranking, I'm going to put ColourPop Sonic Bloom. Now, the background of this is going to be kind of reflective in the ring light. Maybe not. Maybe, does that look okay? It looks okay in the viewfinder. So this is just one of my quintessential fall palettes. I absolutely love pulling this out, not only like throughout other points of the year, but especially right now in the fall time. I think it's mainly because these three, well, actually this whole bottom row down here, you've got like this really pretty kind of like matte orangey red shade, then a berry shade, which we all know how Haley feels about berries. Then you've got like a great, like, not, it's like a mid-tone brown, and it's kind of on the chocolate side. And then you've got this last shadow here, which I think always looks black on camera, but it's kind of like a charcoal gray brown shade. It's just really interesting. I really love these types of shadows over black shadows because I feel like it's easier to control and get like the color intensity that you want, and you're not as intimidated as like by using a black shadow. So either way, this is one of those palettes that is the great ColourPop formula. Like I said, I really do enjoy it. The only reason it's coming in more towards like, I guess, middle of the pack, maybe towards, it's still kind of like the later or the last half of the pack. But there's just a lot of like samey shades in here. Like honestly, this whole top row, like these two shades, this is one of those matte sequin shades, like the matte with glitter. But it's really kind of the same as this like golden champagne shimmer shade down here. And then these two browns, like they might look a little bit different in the pan, but on the eyes, like they're the same. So this whole top row, in my opinion, could have been either eliminated or done something to more like flesh out this color story. Like having a matte yellow shade within here would have been amazing. Alright, so up next I will do Menagerie Killer Purr in this ranking. Now I do feel a little bit bad about including this palette because I have taken shades out of here that I didn't like. Now they're missing because I have them in a different palette for a different video. But I have taken out shades from this palette that I didn't like and put shades in from Menagerie that I really wanted. So like these two are Menagerie singles, and then the shadows that do live in here are Menagerie singles as well. I will say though, this antelope shade, I did finish it off completely and just repurchase like another antelope shade to live in here. But so maybe it's a little bit cheating because I've made this palette more perfect for me. But I'm still going to include it in the ranking because it's one of the numbers that we drew. So either way, again, much like with the ColourPop palette, I just feel like this is one of Menagerie's more play it safe palettes. But this is like a fun twist on a neutral palette because you do have some of those more colorful but neutral, like grungy-esque shades, we will say. So of course you've got like a plummy purple here. Then you've got this really nice like matte army green kind of shade. This main shade is really beautiful. It's one of my favorite like darker, grungier, mustard, like yellow kind of shades. So yeah, I just really love dipping into this palette. I feel like this is a great like summer fall kind of palette. You can do like really pretty sunset eyes in here. And I really do enjoy the Menagerie formula. I feel like this palette is kind of similar to the same vibes that it gives me as the ColourPop Sonic Bloom palette. So the reason this one ranked in a little bit higher is because I do like the Menagerie formula, especially of this palette, better than the ColourPop one. Okay, so top four. This is where it got really difficult, and I was like rearranging them, like no this one, but no this one, but no this one. So I'm just going to leave it at this because as we all know, with every ranking video, I'm sure everyone who ranks their makeup says this, I could sit down and do this next week and it would be totally different. So palette number 4, I'm going to give it to the Glamlite Dirty Martini palette that was part of their Happy Hour collection. So this is their more green themed one. Now I love my greens and that is why this is ranking up so high within the pack. However, this one has to come in at the the bottom of the top 4 because there are a lot of shades in here that I would change within this palette. Specifically some of these blue shades. They're really pretty and I do like them, but some of them I just don't feel like go with this palette in the way that I would personally want it to. So specifically like this gin shade here, this is just like a ocean, like pool kind of blue shade, and I just don't really like it paired with all of these greens. But like I said, at the end of the day, this is a very heavily green themed palette. I can just ignore that gin shade, and I still like this. I still get a lot of fun looks out of this, and I have to say, like, the impressings on these pans, so like there's a little martini glass in this one, and then like a little bunch of olives in this one. I have like used these shadows like a handful of times, and I have not even made like a dent on like ruining the impression of them. So really impressed with that. But yeah, love the Glamlite formula. They have like a really nice matte formula, easy to blend out. Their shimmer formula is really nice. It's one of those more like softer, squishy shimmer formulas, but I still find them to be really impactful and easy to work with. I have like a mystery dog hair, puppy hair on my face, and I cannot find it. So, palette number 3. Gotta give it to the Glamlite Frosted Flakes palette. So, I have absolutely fallen in love with this. I did wait a while to pick this up. I did not pick this up when it first launched, but I'm so glad that I did. Now, before this palette, blue and orange was a color combination that I really did love. And I kept trying to talk myself out of this palette because I was like, Haley, you have so many blues and you have so many oranges. And that's still very true, but I really did want them in one palette. Like one palette where I could take this with me if I wanted to. And then that way, if I was in the mood for like a blue and an orange look, like I had it. You know what I mean? I didn't have to take 2 palettes. But either way, like I said, this is still the really great Glamlite formula. I rank this one above Dirty Martini simply because right now I'm just finding the combination of blues and oranges more inspiring, and I'm also finding blue shadows to be a bit more inspiring than greens. I just have had a lot of fun playing with them, and I think that's mainly because we are sitting like in the fall, but we're getting ready to head into the winter season. And while I still do advocate that you can wear whatever makeup you want in whatever season, I just really love my blues in the winter time. Like they excite me in the winter time. So yeah, I feel like that's why a big reason why this one is coming in at number 3. All right, so top 2. This was really hard. It just got harder and harder. All right, number 2. I'm gonna give it to the Glamlite Wine palette from the Happy Hour collection. I really have fallen in love with this. I just love purples and I love berries and I love it when they're cool tone. Like I really prefer cool tone purples over warm tone purples. And so that's what I'm getting from this palette. And I also appreciate that this is more of a matte heavy palette. There's not as many shimmer shadows in here as like you get in the Dirty Martini palette. I about called it the Dirty Olive. But the Dirty Martini palette. And I feel like this palette makes a lot more sense than the Dirty Martini palette. This one, I honestly, like, I don't like this Chardonnay shade because it's a brassy golden shade and I just don't get a lot of use out of those. But this shadow makes sense within this palette. Like, that is a shadow that is going to play really nicely with these cool tone purples. And so I feel like this had to come in a little bit higher than the Dirty Martini because there are actually things that I would change because I feel like they don't make sense, whereas with this palette I don't feel like there's anything to necessarily change because it all does make sense. You know what I mean? It just boils down to personal preference. But either way, like I've said, I really do love the Glamlite formula. I just think that I get a lot of fun looks out of this, even though this is a monochromatic, like purple berry kind of palette. I haven't gotten bored with this, and I feel like every time I do dip into this, I do get a different look than what I had done before, unless I'm like intentionally repeating a look, obviously. But yeah, I've just had a lot of fun playing with this. And much like the Frosted Flakes palette, I really was on the fence about adding this into my collection, but I'm super happy I did. I feel like this is one of my more used palettes as we are sitting right like here at this part of the year. All right, so number 1, I really went back and forth on giving number 1 to this palette or to the Blueberry Muffin palette. And at the end of the day, I have to give it to the Blueberry Muffin palette. I just love this. This really does hold such a special place in my heart, even though I think I like the Bubblegum palette a little bit more, but shh, we won't hurt his feelings, okay? I really do love that this is the perfect combination of like blues with neutrals so that you can get more comfortable with blues. I just think that this palette is so smartly laid out, and every shade that they did include in here is very thoughtfully done. This again is the great, amazing BH Cosmetics quality formula. And I just have so much fun coming into this palette and creating endless kind of looks. Even with some of like the darker shades that I did find to be a little bit intimidating when I first got this palette. So like Tempting here is like, it's becoming like a fan favorite shade. It actually has like a really nice dip on it. But I love taking this and putting this more in like my outer V and then layering one of like the lighter shimmers on top of it. But I have even worn this, like done a lighter crease. So like taken like Delish and Cheat Day, made my crease really light and bright, and then put Tempting all over the lid. So this is just one of those palettes that one, got me out of my like comfort zone, really got me into blue shadows, but it still is a palette that I pull it out to this day, even after having owned it for so long, and I still feel very inspired by it. So I feel like that says a lot. That's why this one had to come in at number 1. But that is it. That is all 10 randomly chosen palettes ranked. Yeah, that's the way to say it. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this. I had a lot of fun. Let me know if you want to see this again sometime in the future on my channel, because I feel like this was a really fun way to just, you know, not have any influence on what you're going to talk about, but still get to like rank your makeup. And I feel like it's really nice to, you know, feature these older palettes and give them some love. So I hope you're having a good day, a good night, or a good whatever, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye.